Hi, I'm Angela Truscott, founder of Take Two. Welcome to our Friday feature artist interview series. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we record this interview. Enjoying these conversations? Why not hit the subscribe button so you can never miss an episode? And if you feel moved, leave us a review so we can keep sharing these stories far and wide. Today's guest is Helen Geglio. Helen is a storyteller. She shares her stories through what she describes as textile collage, layered in meaning, covered in hand stitch, and rich with personal and cultural resonance. Her work is deeply evocative, her visual language unmistakable, and it's my absolute pleasure to be talking with Helen today as our 182nd Friday feature artist. In this conversation, Helen shares her background as an art teacher, her lifelong love of textile collage, and why themes of women's work and motherhood are so vital to the narratives we tell through art. We're living in what Helen describes as an information storm, a time where we are consistently surrounded by noise and distraction. Helen will share how she quiets that storm through the rhythmic, meditative act of hand stitching, a process that allows her to focus on something beautiful, meaningful, and lasting. By the end of this interview, it is our hope that you'll not only feel inspired to pick up a needle and thread, but you'll be reminded that you don't need fancy tools or a large studio space to begin. What matters most is the act of creating, telling your story, one stitch at a time. So please join me in welcoming Helen Geglio, our 182nd Friday feature artist. Hi, Helen. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Angela. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's been great. We originally discovered you and your work at Festival of Quilts this year over in Birmingham. And I must say, a few people said that if the building was to be evacuated, they'd grab yours and run.
That's very kind.
It was very kind. I also wanted to thank everyone who's watching on podcast or listening on podcast format and watching at home. I just wanted to say it really is a pleasure to talk to artists like you, Helen, and to bring this Friday feature artist series to life every week for everybody at home. And I think to date, I just counted, we're up to about 182 episodes. So although that's a lot, discovering artists like yourself, Helen, it just feels like we're scratching the surface. So thanks again for being with us.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. Well, we've got lots to cover today and lots of beautiful images to share. So I'll be sharing them on the screen. And for those listening, you can refer back to our website on the show notes and view some of Helen's beautiful work. And also, Helen, you have a stunning website. So we'll be linking to all of those things in the description below.
Wonderful.
To start with, Helen, if someone has listening at home and they have never seen your work before, how would you describe it?
I think my work is a lot like collage in that I put together pieces, usually on a background, and then overlap the pieces, layer them, and then I use hand stitches to bind it all together, to pull it all together and create a surface texture with stitches and little bits of fabric and even sometimes pieces of vintage embroidery and things that I find in my studio. I usually use a related palette of colors too, so that they have a kind of a quietness to them, I think, usually.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to you about your colour palette. I've got a few questions around that, actually. Do you describe your work like using the word quilt or textile art or something? How would you describe it?
Well, I am a little careful about using the word quilt because I think it sends out an image in people's heads of a bed cover with a certain format, the pieced, beautiful pieced quilts and the batting in between and the very careful small stitches in an arrangement that is usually symmetrical. My work doesn't fall into that category at all. But that is at the root of what I do, this idea of a sandwich of fabrics stitched together through all the layers. And a lot of the work I'm doing now is sprung from an interest in traditional quilts and learning about those. I live in a part of the United States where many people make quilts, and it's a kind of a tradition, particularly with the Amish people. And I got really interested in those traditional quilts, which sort of led me into the exploration of doing work in that manner, but certainly not with that visual way of doing it.
Yeah, yeah. How do you want people to feel when they first encounter your work?
I would like them to want to move closer and look closely and find all the small little wonders inside what I do. I am not a minimalist. I'm sort of a maximalist. And there's a lot in each of my works. And so I would hope that they would get closer and really explore deeper.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can, attest to that for sure. Joe and I, when we saw your work, we stood there for quite some time, and then we actually circled back around to come and have a second look.
That's thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And we're going to get to a lot of your images, but I just wanted to share a couple now that sort of shows some of that intricate stitch work that Helen does. So you can see here, what sort of stitches? Is this like just a running stitch or a canthus stitch?
Angela, when it all comes down to it, I mostly use variations on a running stitch. Sometimes it'll be a back stitch when I want a solid line. Sometimes it'll be in a little shape like a V or an X. But for the most part, it is a running stitch.
Isn't that beautiful, like the simplicity? And I always think there's this beauty in repetition as well, like something that's been repeated hundreds of times. There's such harmony in it.
And there's so many variations. The width of your thread, the color of the thread, the space between the stitches, the spacing of the actual stitch. There's so many variables that can make it change in how that's perceived.
Yeah, yeah. Amazing. I feel like we could go on a stitch journey right now, and I'm happy to. But I would love to talk about what your journey was into becoming a full-time artist. You've had quite an interesting journey, like studying art, becoming an art teacher, now working as a full-time artist. Like, what did that path look like for you?
Well, I was one of those arty kids, and I showed an early aptitude, and my parents encouraged me and sent me to museum classes on the weekends and things like that. There was not art in my elementary school, but when I got to the middle level, there was an art class, and I just dove right in. And I also took art in high school and ended up going to art school at my state university. And I was not, at that time, I don't think my state university even had a fibers program. It was painting and drawing and sculpture and ceramics and printmaking and photography. So I didn't really ever develop a kind of a practice of using textiles in my early training. What I did develop was that sense of composition and color and basic design things that really transfer to whatever you do and what I ended up doing. I feel like my early training was kind of pivotal. But remember, people of my age at that time, if you were a woman and you were an art major at college, you were really urged to get a teaching certificate so that you would have something to do after school. And I did. And actually, teaching was a wonderful thing for me. I had a long and challenging and interesting career teaching art to little kids all the way through the middle level and a few older people. I also taught at the college level to teachers in training, and teaching was a wonderful thing for me. And in
Mm.
2014, I retired as a teacher. There were some things going on in my life that made it a good time to retire. My mom had broken her hip. My dad had to stop driving. My youngest child graduated from college, and it just seemed like everything was moving toward a good time to retire.
Yeah.
And that's what I did and became a full-time artist.
Yeah.
I did. I became a full-time artist. I'd been working with fibers for probably a few years up to that point. I'd been working mostly in felt because I didn't have to worry about turning edges. I was still thinking with the brain of traditional quilt making. And so I've
Yes.
been doing a lot of stuff with embroidered felt. And I discovered an artist named Jude Hill who was mostly online. And
Mm.
she was making artwork by just putting fabric on other fabric. No turned edges, no applique, anything like that. And I thought, you know, I could get away from felt and start doing this. Because,
Mm.
I kind of had a realization. What I'm making is art, not something that is going to be used as a bed cover. So it doesn't have to be washable. It doesn't have to have neat, tidy seams. And that kind of opened up a whole new chapter for me.
Yeah.
So I ended up kind of putting together a mobile studio. I was moving back and forth to Detroit, taking care of my parents. Every couple of weeks, I'd go for 4 or 5 days, and I'd take my stuff in a laundry basket, kind of my
Yeah.
mobile studio, and just kept working. And
Yes.
I have to tell you that I had some early success, and that was very validating. One of my earliest pieces was accepted in a large show in California. And that same year, I had a piece accepted for Quilt National. I was a newbie. I had never entered anything like this before. And so I had this early success, which was really validating
Yeah.
and helped me feel confident enough to keep going. And I've just
Mm.
been going ever since.
Yeah. Good on you. Congratulations, Helen.
Thanks.
It's such a great story. And you can tell that you would have been such a passionate and well-loved teacher. We were just having a conversation with another artist we were working with who's also a teacher and has just moving into his retirement. And we were discussing, reminiscing about the teachers that we loved the most during our primary school and high school years. And we all had one or two, and I bet that you are one of those for a lot of your students as well. So
I loved teaching.
yeah,
It was a great thing for me. Yeah.
yeah. You said something when we met earlier that you in the curriculum, it's very important for the student to see themselves reflected in that curriculum. What did you mean by that?
Well, I kind of go back to when I was in university in the 70s. We didn't really we did Renaissance to modern and classical, but we never saw any work by women artists. Certainly no deliberate or in-depth study of African American or Hispanic artists. We certainly did not delve into any untrained artists. And
Mm.
um, when I started teaching, we had a curriculum that was adopted that was full of these images from all over the world, across time, across cultures. And I was able to show those things to my students and learn all about them myself.
Yeah.
I also had a wonderful opportunity for a National Endowment for Humanities grant to teachers to take an in-depth study one summer about African and African American art connections.
Mm.
And many of my students were African American, and it really offered me an opportunity to show artists that I had recently been introduced to that I thought everybody should see. And so we, as a school and as a separate classrooms, just kind of took off and learned all about Jacob Lawrence and Faith Ringgold, and that particular seminar that I did that summer kind of shaped a lot of how I taught in the future, making sure that students were seeing images of art and of people that looked like them.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think that's the one thing that I love about the internet is that a lot more art is more accessible to all of us to be able to go and delve deep into, like, we're not just restricted to sort of like the old school art books and maybe outdated curriculums.
The women artists, half the world.
Exactly. I've got a beautiful book, actually. I left it upstairs because my daughter stole it. She's studying art, fine art at the moment. She's majoring in oil painting, but she's doing an essay at the moment on a fiber artist, and I happened to come across it. And I know that you're an avid reader, but this book is called Women's Work, and it's just the most beautiful book. And so I recommend it to everyone to have a look at. And it just, it has across disciplines too, like there's Lucy Ray's featured in there, of course, Louise Bourgeois, a lot of fiber artists are in there, and ones that I'd never heard of. So it's a good flip through. It's a good read. I want to talk about material and themes. So why did you choose cloth as your main medium?
I was always interested in clothing as a young person, and I had two sisters, and the three of us, my mother was not a sewist at all. The three of us all learned to sew at school, and we decided we were going to make ourselves nicer clothes. And so we learned to sew, and we learned to sew well, and we put together outfits and shared and sometimes fought over them. And that's kind of how I got that sewing thing going. And then as the years went by, I did some sewing for myself and for the kids for a long time. But I like the materiality of fabric. I love to go into a fabric store and just feel stuff and look at stuff. And fabric is a natural medium for me. I love textiles, and I collect a lot of textiles. So
in terms of finished artwork or the actual text, like actual fabrics themselves?
A little bit of both. Well, a lot of bit of both. I love cultural textiles. I have molas and arpieras and beautiful adire cloths and mud cloths and all kinds of beautiful textiles that I've collected over the years or have been given to me. Those I just kind of look at and enjoy. As far as my stash, I have lots of stuff. I don't buy very much. I rely a lot on things that are thrifted or given to me, or I kind of inherited. And so a lot of my collection is from things that were around my parents' house or were given to me by friends and family. They'll say, or random people will meet me and say, oh, I've got this christening dress you've got to have. And then into the mail it goes. And I always say, I may not use this right away and it may not be in the form it is now, but I will put this in my collection and use it for something.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. How do you go about choosing from your stash? How do you go about choosing materials to actually place in your work? Like, do you work on a color theme, a texture, a weight?
A lot of it will depend on the kind of the theme I'm going for. And then I will go through kind of a closet that has open shelves that I can kind of look at. And I'll go through and I'll select out a few things to start with. I will typically choose a base. And the base may or may not show in the finished work, but it's usually linen. And that's the kind of thing I will, if I buy anything, I'll buy linen. and use that as the base. But I have these kind of rattan plates, and they're full of little pieces of all kinds of fabric. And I keep those kind of out, and then I will start selecting and kind of pull together kind of a palette of fabrics and work from that. If I worked with everything I had, I'd get overwhelmed. So I kind of narrow it down a little bit before I start.
Yeah, there's real power in limitations, I think.
Yeah, well, and you just can't have all that stuff around. You'd never be able to choose anything.
Yeah, exactly. Many of your works explore women's lives and motherhood and shared histories. Are those themes generally expressed in a symbolic way, or do you sometimes tell specific stories and events in your work?
A lot of times they're driven by the particular fabrics I'm using, like I'll use an old apron or something like that. But there was an instance where I was working on a series called The History of Toil, and it was focused mostly on Depression era fabrics. But I thought, how can I really tell the history of toil without telling this story of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City? And so for that particular piece, I did have a period shirtwaist that I came by it was in a bunch of clothes that my grandmother's friend had given us for dress up. And I'd hung on to it and kind of carried it around with me through most of my young adult life. And it was a shirtwaist from that time, which was about 1910, 1911, I think. Yeah. And it actually fit me, but the female form was kind of constructed by undergarments in a very different way at that time. So it fit very oddly, and I never wore it. And I thought, wow, I'd like to use this garment in a series of artwork about this factory fire. And I think that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, is taking scissors and cutting that in half. And I cut it in half in two ways. This is the front view, but there's another quilt that was the back view. And this was a kind of a horrific story of a workplace disaster. This factory was full of young garment workers, mostly teenagers, women from Eastern Europe and Italy mostly. And a fire broke out on the 8th floor, and the elevator stopped working, and the doors had been locked to prevent girls from going out for smoke breaks or bathroom breaks. And they perished in this fire. And tragically, many of them chose to jump out of this building. It was a real pivotal point in workplace safety at that time. And one of the people that observed this horrific accident was Frances Perkins, who was the Secretary of Labor under Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And she had really, it kind of ignited in her a zeal for reforming workplace safety. And as a result, the garment workers were organized and workplace conditions improved. So out of this tragedy, some good did come. But the building is still used by New York University. The building itself was almost indestructible, but the people inside it were not.
Yeah, I did. When I discovered your work, and we spoke about this earlier, I did a bit of a deep dive on that event, and it is so tragic. But the work that you've represented there is beautiful, and to actually have one of the shirts, makes it very, very powerful.
It was a real poignant project, and I think that's about as representational as I get as an artist, because I was telling this very specific story about a place and time.
Yeah. When I was researching your work, and as a mother myself, I was is that your cat?
That's my cat.
We always have surprise guests. as a mother, like your bundle series really caught me when I saw it. I just dropped off my son to a week-long camp, and it's a whitewater rafting camp, and it's not I don't ever want to do whitewater rafting. I feel like it's a dangerous thing, but, he's a young 16-year-old boy, and he's like, I'm into it. I'm off. See you later, Mum. And I sat down after dropping him off to research your interview, and I was clicking through your images, and I came across this image here, which is entitled Bundle Teen Set. And I didn't actually or intellectually know the context of the work, but I just read the title and I, obviously look at the work, and it just sort of really touched me. It really hit me. And I was like, got a bit teary, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is like I could just see my son here very much. Can you tell us about this series of work and what it means to you?
Yeah, this series was kind of about this idea of how we seek to protect our kids from the dangers of the world, and we kind of wrap them up and try to wrap up our worries for them, knowing that we will eventually have to let them loose into the world. This bundle was called Amulet Bundles for Teen Drivers. And it was based on the experience of my oldest daughter having totaled my minivan a few months after she turned 16 years old, getting her license. And she was fine, and the other driver was fine. The car was a total loss. And many years later, I'm looking through our junk drawer, and sure enough, we have 3 sets of keys to this car. And I thought I'd like to do something with those. And so the basis of these bundles is a children's board book that I get repurposed from our library sale. And then I just wrapped it up with all kinds of wadding and fabrics and stitches and strings and little things, found objects and safety pins and things that kind of represent this idea of holding things together, safety. Yeah, I loved making these. And I made quite a few, and they're very dear to me.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, just looking at them, I can imagine a lot of Ollie's things wrapped up in a bundle, and it's that thing, isn't it? You want to keep them safe. You want them to experience life and go out there and do these things and be capable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, just stay home.
I always tell people that, the teenage years were hard for me. I have 4 children. And the teenage years were really hard for me because I was either mad or worried pretty much all the time.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Why do you think female artists may be resistant to making work related to motherhood?
I've had a chance to think about that a little. If we flip that over, how many men can you think of that are making work about parenthood? Even though parenthood is shared and it's something that is of importance to both men and women, and it often takes up, a large part of our lives while we have kids in the house and we're raising children. I think that for some reason, women are the ones that kind of get the role of parent as kind of part of their identity. And I think that maybe part of that is that women that want to be taken seriously as artists are worried that themes about motherhood might be seen as maybe just not in keeping with that idea of the professionalism of an art practice. I didn't feel that way when I was making these or some of the other work I made about motherhood. But I think that there is that thing.
Yeah, a bit of a stigma to it, maybe.
Yeah, or just not wanting that to be the reason that you're making art. I don't know.
Yeah.
People
I'm
have
thinking,
written things about this. I've read some articles and done
mm,
some thinking about it. I wish that motherhood was an issue that people felt really very comfortable including in their
yeah,
artistic ideation. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Especially when you see work like yours as well. I think that it doesn't, themes about motherhood can be quite sophisticated and
yeah,
represented in a really contemporary way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
another thing. We don't want our art to be sweet or sentimental.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
there's a lot of there's a lot of layers there, aren't there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm thinking back to a lady you might know, Wen Redmond,
Yes,
another
yes.
renegade quilter, she likes to call herself. And she did a beautiful piece when her children left home, and it was a nest, like an empty nest.
I
And
know that piece.
you
Yeah,
do know that piece, yeah.
beautiful. That was
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah,
really beautiful, quite touching too, like you did feel that bit of a hole in your heart. So,
yeah.
mm. Yeah, can be done, people, can be done. Let's encourage people to do it. Mm, very special being a mum.
It
Okay,
is.
before I get teary, okay, mind maps. You've created a series called Mind Maps, and I just loved how you described it. And if you don't mind, I'd love to read your little paragraph that you've written about what a mind map is. So Helen says, a mind map can be described as thinking made visible. By pulling a threaded needle through cloth, each stitch helps me organize my thoughts, see connections, and make sense of the world. It's such a powerful description. Mm.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Can you tell us about the series called Mind Maps? And I'll put a few images up on the
Oh,
screen.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
Actually, this goes back to my teaching career. Um, I don't know, somewhere in the, I don't know, 2010s ish. I was doing a license renewal, so I was taking this online class, and the instructor introduced this idea of a mind map, and
Mm.
I was really intrigued with that idea, and then went on to introduce that idea to my students because the mind map was a means for organizing information in a visual way.
Mm.
And so when I started thinking about mind maps in Stitch, I was really kind of reacting to what's going on right now, where we have this kind of information storm,
Mm.
and we need to individually find ways to process that information
Mm.
without going crazy, without feeling overwhelmed. And for me, this process of stitching, this repetitive stitching, and these are very heavily stitched on whole cloth,
Mm.
um, helped me kind of pull into focus, to kind of get things framed in a proportion that was more helpful. I think sometimes many of us get kind of locked into these circular thinking and really
Mm.
feeling a little bit like there's too much going on and that we're not up to the job of taking it in. And I think by slowing down a little bit and trying some of these practices of
Mm.
almost meditative
Mm.
stitch, we can find this kind of pathway to well-being at the
Mm.
same time. So the mind maps are really about information and also about well-being, how we can support our own well-being and at the same time process things that we are having
Yeah.
difficulty with.
Yeah, absolutely. Are they recent? Did you say they were a
These
recent
are
series?
very new. Yeah, yeah. Um,
Mm.
I think I made my first ones in late 2024, and
Mm.
then I just finished the red ones that you showed just a couple
Mm.
months ago. Those are pretty new. Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. Well, they're absolutely beautiful. How
Thank you.
big are these pieces, Helen?
They're narrow. They're about 30 inches wide, but they're about 60 inches long. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're about that size.
Yeah. Fantastic.
You know what I did is I just took a 60-inch piece of linen and folded it in half, and
Yeah.
they're long and narrow like that. That worked out really well.
Yeah. And you can see here we're showing on the screen a really detailed image of one of Helen's mind maps called Everything. And you can see the beautiful seed stitch there, which is just, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
You can really
just packed with stitch, Angela. They're just packed with stitch.
Packed. Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't want to get political, but with everything that's happening in the US, I can understand why this would be a really healing and meditative way just to try and quieten the noise.
Right.
Yeah, I can totally understand that.
Yeah.
Where do how do you develop your ideas? So, like, do they start with research or sketching or journaling or the materials themselves? Or, I mean, sometimes we've seen.
Yeah. Idea finding is something I like talking about because for me, I'm a pretty idea-driven artist. Other artists are very inspired by the natural world or inspired by the formal processes of creating art. But I think, at heart, a storyteller. Even though my work is very abstract, at heart, I'm a storyteller. So sometimes the idea finding I have comes from an interesting piece of cloth. A piece of clothing particularly. I do a lot with clothing. But I also sometimes I'll see things that will kind of spark an interest in me. And then I got to tell you, I'll go down a rabbit hole on researching. I'll completely go down this rabbit hole and find out everything I can and look at all kinds of images that would support that. An example is that earlier this year, I did a series of kind of portal works in wool that were called Wayfinder, Finding a Way. And I thought, well, what if I used a labyrinth image in these artworks? Well, can you imagine Googling labyrinth, and all of a sudden I'm on this weeks-long journey of reading about the history of labyrinths and looking at labyrinths and trying to figure out how to make labyrinths and then translating that into stitches. That's a lot of what happens to me. I get really interested in something and I just kind of develop that. I like to work in series for that reason, because I think good ideas are hard to find. And so when you have one, you want to explore it more fully than just one piece. You want to go back to that point where you make a decision to go this way and the next time go that way, and kind of pull together different options within that same line of thought. So I almost always work in series. If you see a one, it's because it was an idea I didn't think was the one I wanted to keep going with.
Makes sense. I just wrote that down, like, good ideas are hard to find, I think. So when you do find one, do a deep dive, go in there, like follow that train.
Yeah. And then explore a little more. Yeah. Some of the work I did in the pandemic was around women's PPE, the idea of personal protective equipment.
Yeah, and right.
So I made these like armor-like forms. And same thing. I went on this journey to find out all about armor. And that, I'm still looking at some of those things. Yeah.
Is this one of those images there?
Yes. That's women's PPE. That's a breastplate. And this is life size. And it was made on a linen tea towel that I embroidered and then shaped. This is where my dressmaking experience comes in. I kind of use that typical bodice form. And then I formed this over like a plastic T-shirt form from like a department store and used a fabric stiffener to get it into this shape.
Yeah, wow.
This was so much fun. I did these in the backyard during that first summer of the pandemic, and I think I made 15.
Wow. Are these two part of it too?
These are later. These are from a
Mm,
series called Her Armory, which is felted armor. And
mm,
these are made entirely of wool. And
mm.
even the little rivets are needle felted rivets.
Wow. Yeah, beautiful. They're really powerful. Just looking at them, even if you didn't know the name of it, you instantly know that that's women's armature. You just
Yeah.
get it.
I picked up all this lingo. Brigandines. I didn't know what that was. And I
Yeah,
picked that up through my research. These are brigandines.
yeah. So great.
Who
So
knew?
yeah, you knew. So there you go, people. A hot tip from Helen. Grab that good idea and don't let it go until you've fully explored it. Mm. How does the family cope when you're in a deep dive, Helen? Do they
Well,
know just to leave you
it's,
alone?
it's just me and my husband and the cats here now, but the cats sort of move in for attention.
Come on, give me some attention.
Yeah. Or they plop themselves right down on what I'm working with. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice, it's nice to be able to have that time to do that deep research and allow yourself to have that time.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I find is that, I'm constantly, as you said, like in an information storm is a really good way to put it. But there's lots of things coming at you all the time, and then you're constantly moving on, moving on, moving on. But it's just, I don't get jealous. That's not the right word, but I'm really proud of people who can sit down and actually go, no, I'm focusing on this, and then the rest of the world can go away, and I'm just going to go and focus on this. I want more of that in my life. So yeah, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. Composition and color. Like when it comes to composition, how do you begin building a piece? Like, do you plan it out or does it evolve as you work?
I rarely use a sketchbook.
Mm.
Rarely. Sometimes I'll explore kind of an idea. I made a series of artworks that were triangular in form. And for
Mm.
those, I did a little bit of sketching just to kind of get that idea kind of under my belt a little bit, getting outside the rectangle. But yeah, I think one of the reasons I like working the way I work, remember I compared it a little bit to collage earlier, is I can place things and kind of audition shapes and things without committing right away. It's not like when you're painting or where you're um, cutting something. I can kind of arrange things and then take things off and put things on or cover things. Um, and so that gives me a lot of flexibility. And that's typically what I do. I'll start with the base that I'm going to be working on and then start laying things in. And then, of course, the whole time I'm thinking that the stitches are also going to be part of that composition. So I'm thinking about that. But I usually start with the fabric,
Mm.
the fabric pieces first.
Yes.
And this is a very easy way for me to kind of do some of that trying out using fabric because pretty much anything you do can be undone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
What about color? Like, how important is, because your work, I love the color of your work. It's just beautiful. But how important is color in creating a successful composition for you?
Oh, I think it's key. I don't consider myself a colorist. I have a lot of trouble with color. And that's why I think if you kind of do an overview of my work, you're going to see that a lot of it is a similar color range. I almost never
Mm.
use green. I don't know why. I have a beautiful garden. I love green. I almost never use it.
Yeah.
Same with purple. I don't use it much. I think that I kind of, and part of that too is what I've collected. You know,
Mm.
I've got some things, and I do some dyeing to change the color of things for sure. But I
Yeah.
think color is the thing I struggle with the most. You know,
Really?
yeah, I'm really, and that's one thing that you kind of have to do. You do have to have sort of an idea in your head about
Yeah.
how the colors are going to work together. And
Yeah.
You know, I've had pieces that I've bailed out on because I didn't like the color.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
that often, but I've bailed on some things.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. It's like that pyramid, isn't it?
Yeah,
We only see the top of the
right,
pyramid, right? No one ever
right,
sees what's
right,
yeah, exactly.
exactly.
One of the pieces that like I go back to look at it a lot this week was your mind map called Thinking Full. And if I can just indulge a little bit here, Helen, if you don't mind, and share with you like how it grabs me in terms of like color and composition. Like at first, I'm really drawn to the white upside down U in the middle. And I'm saying it's white. To me, it's white, but it might be cream. Like that to me is like the entry point into the piece, like the if you want to use design terms, like that's your focal point. And then from there, my eye runs straight to the hot pink, these three big, bold rectangles of hot pink. So I'm kind of like, from there, I'm running down through, if you can imagine, sort of like a semicircle down the right-hand side and then across the bottom. And then what I love about this is that it's so subtle, but without it, I don't think the piece would be as successful, is if you've gone down from the middle, you've gone around, and then your eye shoots straight back to the top. And there's a tiny, tiny accent circle of the same hot pink color. It's minute from where I'm sitting. But that to me, without that, if I took my finger over it, you get stuck at the bottom of the piece. But just by how you've linked the color and then you've put this tiny little dot at the top. And then what that allows me to do is my eye rests at the top then. And then I start going, oh my gosh, look at all the little details. And then I come back in through the lighter stitched areas down the right-hand side and I pretty much do a loop again, but it's a smaller loop. And where you've repeated the symbols and then you come back up with really subtle light stitching. So I'm constantly sort of on this loop in this piece, but having also the dark underneath that little pink spot at the top there also allows me to exit the piece. So I just love it. I'd like to buy it.
Thank you. That's exactly how I would like people to approach my work, particularly these. There are some thinking routines, and this idea of traveling through and following paths and crossing back and then heading up. That's exactly what the mind map is for me. This idea of these thinking routines and circuits that we perform.
Mm.
And your eye is performing those circuits along these different lines of stitch and cloth. And that's exactly what I was hoping to accomplish with these.
Oh, I'm so pleased because to me, it's just incredible. Out of, pure interest, was that little dot at the top there, was that something that you added like at the end and you just went, yep, like almost like that little piece of red painting that everyone does a little touch of red.
I probably added that sort of at a midpoint.
Midpoint.
Because I knew that the pink areas were going to need to have a bounce back point at some point. So I probably the pink parts were well, the first things I put in this one were the white, and those are printed on. Those are printed with just some craft foam shapes with textile paint rolled onto them, and I printed those shapes. And I did that randomly and kind of worked with what I had. And there are a few that I cut out and covered up. We won't talk about those. But those made really pretty interesting areas of that too. So I in many ways, I was working on it the same way you were thinking about it. I was kind of going through this circuit and then heading back up and then exactly.
Yeah, that's just beautiful. Yeah, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. You work really slowly. I don't want to ask a boring question and say, how long does it take you to work on a piece?
That's okay. Yeah. I spend about a month on each piece.
Do you? Yeah. What is a typical day look like?
Well, you know what? That was one thing that that happened to me when I retired. People said, "Oh, what are you going to do?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to be an artist." And then I think I really wanted to avoid a situation like school where, I was sometimes seeing 600 kids a week, and I was seeing them every 35 minutes, and I had to have them out of the room, and then the next group coming in the next 5 minutes. Everything was on the clock. I really had to be on top of my game schedule-wise, right? And
Yeah.
I had responsibilities. I had to go out and do bus duty or breakfast duty or whatever. And so I promised myself that would not happen to me in my new life. So I did not sign up for volunteering this and that place once a week or anything like that. I said, I'm going to use my time in ways that are working for me. So I do some volunteer work, but it's based on what time works for me. Because if I'm working on a series of artwork, that's what I'm doing. But I don't say to myself, "Oh, you've got to do something every day. You've got to be sewing something every day, or you've got to work this many hours in the studio." I don't do that because
Yeah.
I think that for me, it works best to have that balance of when I'm really in the zone, I'll spend lots of time in the studio. And when I'm thinking about stuff or doing my research or things, I need some downtime to just kind of let it marinate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I have a life, I want, I
Yeah.
want, I want to take trips. I want to, take a walk. I've got a life.
Yeah, exactly. 5 grandkids.
Right. 5 little
Yeah.
kids I'm seeing.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I love that, Helen, allowing yourself, a discipline, but freedom is
Yeah.
really, really great. Yeah. We
But yeah,
spoke a little.
each piece takes about a month, and I
Yeah.
make 8 to 10 pieces a year. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a really, um,
Yeah.
I'm not in a mode where I'm making lots and lots of work. I'm not.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I think, you can't become a production house, can you? Yeah. It's got to be, it's
And
got to
that's
be
not my
right.
goal. That's not my goal. That's
No, no, exactly. What keeps you creating?
Oh, I love doing it. I love doing it.
Yeah.
I love sharing what I'm doing with other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we certainly have enjoyed looking at your work today. And one of the things I wanted to touch on for people as well is your visual vocabulary, because when looking at your work, like there's some really strong, I suppose you could use the word symbols or symbolic elements that you use that when you look at, you go, oh, that's a Helen. And I've noticed that eyes are sort of
Yeah.
a repeated motif. We see it here in this beautiful triangular piece called Visionary. V's are very strong, both in mark making, stitch, and also obviously this composition here that we're seeing, which we see it repeated in a lot of your pieces. How did you find your visual vocabulary, and what do some of these marks mean to you?
Um, I think that a lot of these marks are kind of symbolic for some of the ideas that I are overlapping through all my work. One is the passage of time. So you'll often see like a hourglass or a leaf shape, or those kinds of things that kind of symbolize the idea of this passage of time or the seasons of life or the seasons of the year. That's something that I do a lot. The eye I kind of focus on is the protective eye. In this case, this one was about women who are visionaries. This was called invisible visionary, actually. I think so often women are visionary and are often unrecognized in that way. And so, this idea of looking into the future and seeing something important.
Yeah.
And you can see the little hourglass at the top of this one. I was really working with this idea of time and of change. And in the case of these triangular pieces, wisdom, the wisdom of women.
Yes. Yes. It's so true. We often talk about that gut intuition, don't we, or women's intuition?
Mhm. Mhm. And
Yeah.
this idea of all this accumulated knowledge, a sense of resilience. You know, it's just, it's really important. The left side of this shows some of the stitching I do is fill. I use a lot of X's and V's and loops and seed stitch. I love seed stitch to kind of, oh, I don't know, it's a symbol of abundance. It's a symbol of kind of a fullness.
Yeah. I'm also noticing a little stitched needle here with a thread coming out of it.
Yeah, this is actually, that's kind of funny. Those are plastic children's embroidery needles that I couched over.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I just couched right over them. They're still there. And that was kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This idea of mending things together.
Yes. Yeah, you can see, mender. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, there's quite a few of the needles in it. Yes. Coming in. That's gorgeous up through the center of the rip there. That's amazing. Yeah.
I also did something fun with the needles on this. Is I made out of clay these primitive needles. I think I did a pretty good job. They look like the old bone needles, the ancient bone needles. And I put them in every one of the triangular quilts.
Really?
These cloak forms. Yeah.
Oh, how beautiful. Beautiful. They're gorgeous. I love the cloaks. You can almost feel like you'd want to, you do want to
wrap yourself in wisdom, Angela.
Yeah.
Wrap yourselves in wisdom. Absolutely.
Yes. Helen, I feel like you've got so much wisdom to share. What advice would you give people out there who are still trying to develop their own visual vocabulary, their own mark making? Like, what advice would you give them to be able to help get that sense of consistent, recognizable imagery?
Yeah, I think that what you need to do is you need to just kind of relax and do a lot of sampling, sewing a lot of stuff, and almost without thinking about it too much, and see what kind of pops up from the subconscious, or what forms are you drawn to, what looks like you. And I think you don't know that unless you do a lot of experimenting. So I think that developing a vocabulary of stitch is an experimental and exploratory process where you're doing a lot of stitching and then narrowing it down to what really resonates for you.
Yeah, beautiful.
What stitches you can do. Why fool around with stitches that are tricky? Bullion stitch? Hard to do.
I don't know what that one is. Tricky. Don't forget that one, Ange. Stick to the running stitch. Exactly. Yeah, we do try and get overcomplicated, don't we?
Yeah. And sometimes it's good to use something that is a challenge for us. But,
Yeah. It's nice. Helen, your studio is quite humble. What advice to people would you give about their studio space?
Well, this is something I asked Angela if we could talk about, because in 2014, when I retired, I didn't have a studio. And I realized that if I wanted to be a full-time artist and still take care of my parents and do all the other things I needed to do, I needed to just start sewing. And so I basically use a 7x10 sort of mini bedroom, and in it is a table and a chest of drawers. And there I am at my table. It is painted yellow, which just gives me a little bit of a lift. And I have a comfortable chair, and my sewing machine is not visible in this picture, but it's also on that table. I don't use a sewing machine for pretty much anything except making the sleeves for my quilts and artworks. But this is my spot, and I've got good lighting in there. It's really, really nice in daylight, but I also have a good lamp, and I just kind of nestle into this small space and work. And I have an adjoining room where I have a wall that I can pin stuff up on, and and sit in a chair and look at it. I think I probably spend at least a third of my time looking rather than stitching,
Yeah.
getting back from it and looking and deciding what I want to do next or what I need to take out. And then I have an ironing board in that room too. So that's pretty much my whole setup. A table, an ironing board, and a little place to hang things up. And it works well for me. And I think that we should never let the lack of space or involved and exciting equipment keep us from just diving in and getting started.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. When you're working, do you ever listen to music or have a podcast on or like?
Yeah. I'm a big audiobook fan.
Mm.
I listen to audiobooks. There's some podcasts I enjoy. I'm going to put yours on my list. And, I enjoy doing that. And then also that keeps me out of my head. You know what I mean? If you're just stitching all the time, back to those mind maps, you can be in your head a lot. And then that leads again to this kind of unhelpful thinking. And so, I love reading, and I read as many books on audio as I do in paper.
Yeah. Just one question I thought of, Helen, before we wrap up. Like, with the amount of repetition and the stitching that you do and the hours that you do, how do you look after your hands? Like, do you ever get sore hands or any type of RSI from all the stitching, or is there exercise? Like, I'm going like this. Are there exercises that you do to keep your hands working?
I don't. That would probably be a really good idea. I do yoga a couple times a week, and he does have us do some wrist things. But so far, I haven't had trouble with my hands. I worry about that. And if it comes to that point, then I think I can still find ways to be creative, but that sewing machine will probably come out more.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got your beautiful garden too. I had to share a picture of this, of your flowers. They're just beautiful.
And I don't use my garden for inspiration for my art at all. It's like another part of my art practice.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Helen, it's been such an honour to talk to you and share your gorgeous work with the world. I wish you all the very, very, very success and hope to meet you in person one day.
Yeah.
As I said, we're heading up to Chicago. You're based in Illinois as well, so we'll hope to catch up and meet you in person. We do finish our segments with a little we finish our podcast and our interview with a little segment we like to call Every Artist Must. Are you happy to play along?
Yep. I've had time to think about it a little bit.
Okay. All righty. Every artist must learn
to trust their own judgment and their own eye.
And every artist must believe.
I think every artist must believe that what they're doing is important and has value.
That's gorgeous. And every artist must avoid
overthinking. I think that's a real trap sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And every artist must choose.
I think we must choose to take risks sometimes. I think that we must choose to kind of go out on a limb, try new things, try things in new ways, meet new people, do new things, join communities of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love meeting new people and just getting an insight into how they think and what makes them tick, you know?
And that's what connects us in our world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And every artist must create.
I think every artist must create the art that they want to make. I don't think we should allow other people to give us preconceived ideas of what we want to do. If we want to do it, let's just do it and create that.
I love that, Helen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, this was so much fun. I so appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Helen. And thank you, everyone who was listening in on YouTube or on podcast format or through Facebook. It means the world. We got an email the other day from a lady whose husband often comes into the lounge room and says, "Oh, you're sorry to interrupt. You're just listening to your fiver ladies on the TV." And it just warms my heart when we get little snippets like that of of our listeners' lives, of our audience, of our community, so it's lovely. So if you have a little story for us, feel free to email it. We share it amongst the team, and it just warms our hearts and keeps us going. So 182, Helen, and yeah, we're on our way to 200, and who knows from there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Helen. We'll see everybody in the next episode. Bye for now.